Greetings, everyone. My name is Amanda Sanregret, and I lead the Indigenous and stakeholder relations at TransAlta. And here with me today is Aurora Huber, a fourth-year student at Mount Royal University in the Human Resources Program. Welcome, Aurora.
As Amanda mentioned, my name is Aurora Huber. I am in my final semester in the Faculty of Business and Communication Studies at Mount Royal University, where I have been majoring in HR and general management with a minor in psychology. And I am actually originally from Manitoba, but have been able to call Alberta a second home over the past few years.
Awesome. And I would just want to, as part of our commitment towards reconciliation and decolonization, I want to begin by acknowledging that we are located on the traditional territories of the Niitsitapi and the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai, the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda First Nations, and home to the Métis Nation Region 3. So thank you and welcome, everybody. Today we're here to do a bit of a chat for our celebration for International Women's Day. This year's theme is Choose to Challenge, and Aurora and I are going to be talking a little bit about our paths, our careers, and what International Women's Day means to us. So Aurora, as part of this year's theme, Choose to Challenge, how are you personally challenging yourself?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think being in the final semester of my studies, it's that time where I'm trying to figure out like what I want to do with my life and trying to find the right job. So recently I've been applying to more jobs, as I like to call it, like the career, not just a summer position, which has been different. And I think as a female, we are so used to like wanting to be able to check off all the qualifications on a job description. It feels wrong to apply to a job that we aren't completely qualified for. And that's something that I've been forcing myself to get out of that comfort zone. I've had a lot of people in my life tell me that if you were a man and you didn't check off 2 or 3 of those things, you would still apply for the job. And I think I have some really good experience, but a lot of the times you don't have that 3 years of experience or that 5 years. So if I find a job that I've been liking that I think would be interesting and I don't fully qualify for it, I'm trying to put my resume in, and that's been my push recently. And it's been tough. There have definitely been times where I'm like, oh, I'm not going to get that job because of X, Y, Z. But it also feels good when it's like, hey, I haven't been knocked out of the first try. Like I'm still under consideration if I go look at like where you are in the process. So that definitely feels good. It's hard, but it's that mentality of like, if I feel comfortable in the job that I could possibly do there, why not apply?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's fantastic. That's really taking on that that challenge of trying to get rid of some of those preconceived mindsets that a lot of women have and that we have about employment. As someone that's taken that chance and that has kicked off my career by challenging the norm and seeking out opportunities that I wanted to have as a job, and literally emailing and my resume to people that I wanted to work for, and being lucky enough to have them create a position for me, is a really hard thing to do. And I'm really glad to hear that you're challenging yourself that way. And I think it's a great example for any woman out there who is moving into their career to really think about what are those ones that you want to do? I think that's great advice that you just shared about if you've got 1 or 2 things on that list, send your resume in, because that is exactly it. I've actually heard a lot of the same thing. And I know men that apply on positions because they see 1 or 2 things that they can do and they feel perfectly confident to do that. So thank you so much for bringing up that point. I think that's really helpful. So how are you helping promote diversity and inclusion in the workplace and in MRU in a way that helps women thrive?
Yeah, I think the first step for me was understanding what diversity and inclusion actually was. I had a great opportunity to work in a inclusion and diversity team a couple summers ago, and that was my first real introduction to the work that could be done. And I think since then it's become extremely important in my life. I see the benefit more so of having different people put together and the benefit that can come from that. There's so many different ideas, especially when people have so many different backgrounds, especially within the 5 protected groups, and specifically women and Indigenous people with disabilities. I feel like are also often looked past and not really considered. And I think it's so important to include those different backgrounds. So at Mount Royal, since my summer with the Inclusion and Diversity team, I have become a lot more involved than I previously had before. And it includes even just sitting on the committee for International Women's Day. It's something I'm passionate about, and it's given me an opportunity to speak to some amazing women and hear some amazing stories from different people and get to know other women in the Mount Royal University community that I wouldn't have met otherwise. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to sit on this committee and help make an impact, or at least hopefully make an impact moving forward, and especially this year.
Well, that's fantastic. So what do you think MRU's commitments to diversity and inclusion, and even to this day, this special day that we have, International Women's Day, what does that signal to you as a student, both at MRU for the last several years, and then as you move on and are an alumni?
It gives me hope. I'm not gonna lie. I'm obviously in a very female dominated program, but I have seen the male dominated programs as well. And there is definitely an attitude switch. I've worked with males in different groups where it has been like, do you know what you're doing? Do you need help? And it's like I got it. It's fine. If I need help, I'll speak up, but it's not going to be because of who I am. It's going to be because of the type of topic we're talking about. I'm confident in my skills, and I need the people around me to be confident in my skills. And I know so many other people are like that as well. So I really hope that initiatives like this help allow people to be more confident without fully knowing someone's background.
That's awesome. That's some really great advice. So that makes me wonder, for all the people out listening here, what advice can you give for somebody who is, in their first, second year in school and looking to find something to inspire them? What can they participate in, and how can they get involved?
Yeah, I think it's create relationships with your professors. We have such a small community at Mount Royal that we are given the opportunity to sit down and talk with our professors about their research. Find the professor that researches what you're interested in. I've been lucky enough to find a couple of different professors who research focused on inclusion and diversity, and those are the professors I've gotten to know extremely well. And I know they're always in my corner, and they're going to help me with different events like this, whether it's inside the Mount Royal community or outside of the Mount Royal community and external events. I think creating those relationships with professors, students, staff, whatever you can do is really going to help you in the long run.
That's great. So I just want to touch on a little bit of grassroots here for our interview. We're both Indigenous women. So as part of International Women's Day, you and I wanted to share a bit of a fireside discussion here on our computers as two Indigenous women at different points in our careers. So I just wanted to ask you a couple questions about that, if that's all right.
Yeah, of course.
So can you just tell us a little bit about where you're from?
Yeah, so as I originally mentioned, I am originally from Manitoba. I was born in Winnipeg, but my dad is military, so we moved to Canadian Forces Base Shiloh in around 2004, and we've been there ever since, with a couple of years where my dad lived somewhere else. So I grew up on a military base. I wasn't immersed in the Indigenous culture. My dad started to learn about it a little bit later on in his life, and when you're in that awkward teenage space, you're not really ready to take on a whole other culture. You're just trying to figure out who you are then and there. Since then, I have moved to Calgary to come to Mount Royal, and I have had opportunities to start to learn about my culture more in depth, which I have taken advantage of, although slowly sometimes. But yeah, so I consider myself, my family is from Saddle Lake Cree Nation, which is in Treaty 6, and I have some amazing connections there, but right now I am in Treaty 7, and I'm okay with that, and I'm learning.
That's fantastic. Myself, I'm Métis from Elizabeth Settlement, which is just a little bit down the road from Saddle Lake. So we likely have some connections because it's a small world out there. So And I'm glad to hear that you are sort of bringing that experience, because I think growing up in the military and in that landscape has a lot of differences in the way you probably saw life and experienced things living on base than other communities, and then in sort of an Indigenous community perspective. So what made you decide to move into HR as a career opportunity? Now that you've told us that you've grown up on base, and why not a fighter pilot? Just kidding. Why HR?
I don't like being yelled at. Military, it's always scared me. My dad always wanted me to try a different program. And I was just like, you know what? No, I like sleeping in. I like not being yelled at, so I'm good with it. I actually, out of high school, I got into Mount Royal through the psychology program. And I thought that's what I was going to do with my career. I always saw myself helping other kids in military families. And then slowly down the road in my third year, I realized this isn't what I wanted to do. I did the 11-hour drive home by myself for the first time, looked at my mom within an hour of being home and said, I'm not going back. um, she had a heart attack. I think it's the first time we actually argued. And it was tense in the house for a couple days. I remember my dad not talking to me because they didn't understand. I was so close. I was so close to the end at my third year. But mentally, it was not good. I needed a change. So I ended up working during that year off. I was looking at my grades one day and was like, hey, I'm not doing too bad in my HR minor. What if I did that? And I started to look into different careers within HR. And there are so many different paths you can take. There's so many different pots you can get your hand into. And that's what really intrigued me. I always want to be able to continue learning. And I feel like HR was that program that would allow me 20 years into my career to, hey, I'm going to try this. Let's try it. So I applied, and a year later, I returned to Mount Royal with the Human Resources program and General Management. I didn't want to completely throw away the psychology program, so I took that on as a minor. And I right away was like, yeah, this is the right choice. Business scared me, the numbers scared me, but it was worth it in the end. And even though my mom and I argued for that little bit there, we both look back at that year and say it was the best thing I've ever done.
Wow, that's a pretty amazing story of strength and leadership, because it takes a lot of inner strength to really identify what you want to do with your career path, and a lot of determination even to make the change and go into a whole new program. I think myself and a lot of other people can probably relate to wondering if you're on the right path or not as you move into your third year of schooling after you've made such a commitment. And so I have to commend you on that. It's an extreme amount of bravery, and thank you for sharing that with us today, because I think it really helps other people understand that your journey, that it's a journey, I think is the most important part. I know myself for my career that my vision at the start is not where I thought I would be today, but I definitely love where I'm at today in my career. So Aurora, as an Indigenous woman starting your career and you're looking out at the landscape, like you already mentioned that you've had some work experience out there, what are you looking at in terms of opportunities with organizations? What are you looking for in a company or an organization that you'd like to work with?
Yeah, I love this question. This is definitely something I've had to think about as I've been applying for jobs. I haven't been applying to everything and anything. I want to make sure that a company's values align to my own values. I want to be happy with where I am, and I don't want to have to, in a year, switch because I'm unhappy. So I've really been looking for a lot of professional development opportunities because I want to continue to learn. I've also been looking into growth. I want to be able to move within the company. I want to be able to become a leader. And I want to be able to help other people like me. And I really feel like having the opportunity to move into a more leadership role will give me that opportunity. And I'm also just looking for a company that does value diversity and inclusion. If a company doesn't have the diversity statement, are they really committed to it? I think that's a super important thing to be considering too.
That's a great response. I think that's really made me think, just in my role at TransAlta, even right now with our diversity and inclusion policies and commitments that we've made. Recently, TransAlta has made a commitment to 40% women in the workforce. In the next few years, we aim on meeting that target. Is that something that you think is of value to students coming out of school?
I just need to say that is amazing. That's very rare to hear about that, so that's great. And I think in a business area for females, yeah, it is, because we want to know that we're not going to be stuck where we are. You hear so many metaphors about like the glass wall and the glass floor and not being able to move above that. And I want to break that. Like, I want to be able to move. So a company that's committed to it is huge to me. And I'd like to think that other students feel the same way.
Fantastic. I agree. I think that it's something that I've constantly dealt with since I was your age, way back when, and looking at starting my career. And I'm just really happy that the landscape that you're moving into is a lot more diverse and inclusive. And just an example of how we're having a day like today, International Women's Day, to showcase just how important all of these elements of acceptance and equality have a direct influence on people like yourself when you're making your decisions about where you want to work and what you want your career path to be. So I have just a couple questions. Did you want to ask me any questions?
Yeah. I would love for everyone at Mount Royal to hear about your career path. You have said it was unique earlier, like mine. And I would love to know how you got into the position you're in now.
Well, my path was not direct. When I moved from rural Alberta to Edmonton to go to school, I made a commitment to get a degree and have a strong interest in science and in biology. Growing up in rural Alberta, farming, and in the middle of the oil and gas, conventional oil and gas fields, I had a lot of interactions with industry and with environment. And so when I went into university, I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted to be. I was going to be a wildlife biologist, monitoring wolves out in the wilderness and, or working with some kind of animals and doing that. And I started university and I did the environmental conservation science, majored in conservation biology at the U of A. And it was an amazing program, exactly what I was looking for. And then I started into my career, which I am not a wildlife biologist. I did not ever work with wolves. And that's largely because I had a vision of where I wanted to be. And it was more of, I want to make a difference and help people. And not only that, help people to help themselves, help them build strength, knowledge, and skills to reach for the things that they want to reach for and help achieve that. I want to help our environment and improve the world that we have around us. And to do that, I think when I was, starting school, I really thought about I'd have to understand all of these different landscapes in order to really make a difference in a way that would bring the most impact and help the most people. So I thought I'd have to get experience in government, experience in community, and experience working in industry. And so I knew that these things, these elements or these principles have always kind of carried me through my career and helped guide me when I make decisions. Because when you do go to school, and as you guys all know, you're really directed into a specific path. Yeah, a degree program, a program that you're going to complete and set you on a trajectory for your careers. And I guess what I'm saying is that trajectory has a destination. You may not know what that destination looks like because things can change. And for me, it was the job. Some of my first jobs out of university, or while I was still in university, were for Alberta Environment. And I was doing water science and doing all kinds of different things, working with the flooding group and some fun activities. And so when I finished university, I got on with the government, and then I worked in a broad range of things. So biodiversity, oil sands, regulatory areas, surface access. I did all kinds of different jobs when I was in government, which really each job that I had changed the direction of where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. Although my principles are still the same, my vision of being a wildlife biologist wasn't going to achieve those dreams that I wanted of helping make a real difference in people's lives. And so I got policy jobs, which helped me learn a different way of thinking and how policy and regulation are developed, and then how they're implemented, and then now I'm working with industry, and how does industry work within those rules, and how do they affect the landscape and the communities around them. And doing Indigenous relations with TransAlta has been an amazing opportunity. I'm really happy that they took the leap to bring me into this position, because my background was not Indigenous relations. It was environmental science and working in the policy realms. But Indigenous relations is such a broad career scope. I mean, in any week, I can work on agreements, I can work with lawyers, I can work on different fuel types, meaning hydro or wind, gas, coal. So it's been a really interesting career for me. And again, not the same path that I thought that I drew out when I was in my first year. But I wouldn't change it at all, because I really love what I do. And now I see the difference that I have and can make on people's lives, both in the company that I work for. As an Indigenous person, that's part of my job, is to lobby into the company on behalf of Indigenous communities and help build that knowledge and awareness. And I'm lucky that I work for a company that's 100% open to that and supportive of that. I've been quoted a few times saying that I never get told no at TransAlta when I have an idea about a new project or something to do. And I believe that's because the organization shares the same values that I do and really does want to do the best job that they can do in their community relations. And so my path has been kind of irregular, I'm going to say, unplanned, but really has brought me to where I'm really happy, and I know that I'm on the right trajectory for the rest of my career. And so I guess my one piece of advice that I would give you today, Aurora, and others listening, is don't be dissuaded if your path isn't exactly what you planned. Be ready to take those opportunities when they come your way. Be brave, be courageous, and follow your heart and really what you desire. And like you did a change when a lot of people wouldn't have, almost finishing one program and going into another. But I believe it's setting you on a path that is going to help follow your heart and make you happy. And so that's what I think my main advice would be at this point.
That's awesome. Yeah, I totally agree with that advice. I think being in the first year, you're so like you said, it's one way. You're not supposed to take any other direction. You're supposed to stick to it, finish your 4 years. But I think it's also important to remember for students that 4 years isn't 4 years anymore. A lot of programs are 5, 6 years. Personally, for me, I'm finishing the program in 6 years, and I'm okay with that. There have been times where it's been like, oh no, like I'm still in school. I see friends in different career paths, but this is my path and it's going to be unique to me. And I think for first, second, third year, just keep that in mind. It's okay if you have to take that step back. And I think that's super important. I do have one more question for you. You asked me how I feel about TransAlta's commitment to the 40% women in the workplace. As a woman in that company right now, how do you feel about that commitment?
I think it's a fantastic commitment. It's not something that's a surprise to me, working in the organization. Equality is a big thing. We have an amazing CEO in Dawn Farrell, and quite a large contingent of female leaders in TransAlta. So, which is one of the reasons why when I was looking to move there, was really encouraging for me to join the organization. And given that it's in the power industry and there's a lot of industrial facilities that we have at TransAlta, I think that making that kind of commitment really does task the company with looking at all of its different areas and looking to hire in more females. So more females in trades, more females in some of those more operational roles that aren't traditionally female. And so that's one thing I already see at TransAlta. And so to me, this commitment is just, I guess, confirming the trajectory the company is already on, in my perspective.
Yeah.
I already work with a number of women that are in pretty unique, plant operation roles and things like that, that are amazing at their jobs. And I think that's one thing that have to say, coming from working government, but growing up in the oil and gas area, and then coming into a company like TransAlta that's over 100 years old, it's actually really refreshing to see and feel welcomed and valued equally amongst my colleagues, whether they're male or female. So to me, it's just a progression, and I'm really glad, because when you make these commitments out loud, it starts to, like, out loud publicly, it really makes other people start to recognize TransAlta for some of these things, which we're already doing. So it makes me excited too, because I think the more women in the workforce, the better.
100%, yeah.
All right. So I have one more thing. Recently, TransAlta has made an endowment to MRU to support Indigenous communities. And what we've done is we've providing some funding to help build a teepee space for gathering that's socially distanced friendly, as well as some Indigenous programming. And so I just wanted to ask you, is that something that you think would be really helpful for you as you complete your time at MRU? And how important, this is going to be two questions, and how important is having that sort of ethical space available to express your cultural traditions as being important at MRU?
I think it's huge. As I've said before, I'm at the beginning of my journey, so I'm kind of in a different place. But I think I have to keep telling myself that this isn't about me, it's about everyone else. And there's so many people that I know will benefit from it. I would have been curious before to go check it out. Obviously, I'm kind of done, so it'll be exciting to come back as an alumni to see this big teepee for different events, and I'm super excited for it. I think Mount Royal has done a very good job in the sense of students have a safe place to go to explore their identity. I personally wish I had taken advantage of it a little bit more, but I also had that little bit of a fear in the back of my head. So it was like, am I the right person to be taking advantage of it? But I think it doesn't matter who you are. It's a place to go learn. Going to the Indigenous Center, it's just, you can go get more information. You can go learn more about yourself. You can go learn more about those around you. And I think that's so important. I feel like there's still so many myths about Indigenous students within the Mount Royal community or any university community in general. And I think having those types of resources help kind of break down those myths. And I think that's super important. And I know for me, sometimes the myths are hard. It's not all about yes or no, and we're all going to be different. We're all going to have different paths. And I think that's something that we all need to remember, Indigenous or not. I have had a very different journey from someone who may also be Indigenous. I do come across passing as Indigenous. I do have a little bit of darker skin, but I have family who doesn't, and they've have experienced different stuff than I have. So Mount Royal is doing well in the sense of there are places to learn, and I'm so excited to see it continuing to grow.
Well, that's excellent. For myself, when I was looking at setting up an opportunity to work with MRU, I was really impressed by the current Indigenous student population of, I think, just over 6% and a target of 7%. That is one thing that I missed when I was in school. Was there was a Native Studies Center, but not as much of other Indigenous students in my program. And so I just think the more that we can set up some of these spaces in colleges and universities, the more comfortable Indigenous students like yourself and like me when I was a student would be to use them. So do you have any questions or comments or anything else that you'd like to share with us today?
I don't have any questions, but Amanda, just from the Mount Royal community, the International Women's Day Committee. There are been some amazing women that I have worked with. I want to thank them for the opportunity to get to sit down with you today, and I want to thank you for also sitting down with me. I know this was a little bit out of the comfort zone for both of us, but I think we've had a really good conversation, and I hope that everyone listening can just take that step back and really enjoy the conversation as well.
Thank you. I agree. It's been really fantastic speaking with you, Aurora, and I'm sure we're going to talk more in the future. Like I said, it's a small world, and as you move into corporate and working in HR, I hope that any advice I can give you, I'm happy to help out. And thank you for everyone at MRU for taking the time to listen to our chat today. We hope that it was interesting and that it helps you in your journey as you finish your programs and move on with your careers.